Great effect, the 30 Years' War. And the war is going to have 4 phases. And yes, we are going to watch a lit. I couldn't find the decisive battles. I couldn't find video game technology, but I could find Legos.
Yes. Lego. I love those.
So,
I think it's one about the 100 years.
it's not quite as good as you think, but we're still going to watch it. So, here's a map of Europe, and this map pretty much tells you everything you need to know about the 30 Years' War. Sums it up very well. Okay, I'm kidding, it does not at all.
It gives like a general overview.
I have a feeling this is going to be the map.
But it is a horrific mess, this fight. And give me a sec. I'm glad we're filming this. This is good TV.
Like that intermission that I have.
Okay, I'll read my 30 Years' War map. So, sides switch sides. Yes, it started as kind of a religious war, but turned into just a pure war for empire, as they all do. You're going to get people to join up. We're going to fight the evil Satanists, Calvinists, or Catholics, or Lutherans. And so this is going to be a big change in fighting, too. In the 16th century, arquebus musketeers were becoming more and more important right here. Hard to aim, they're very top-heavy, difficult to load. You can see this right here. It was a matchlock, and you had to kind of pull the match towards you, and it would ignite powder in a pan that would ignite powder in the barrel to fire. They were very dangerous. Now, in the 18th century, they come up with flintlock muskets, and those would be much more efficient. I know they don't seem efficient today, but everything is relative.
Everything should like 5 of course it's not good or today.
Yeah, well, but everything, different degrees of technology. So at the time, a massive change. So you're going to have combined arms, and this is a diorama. I know. So this is what you're going to have to reproduce. A diorama of a combined arms. So more and more following the Spanish model, you're going to have combined arms of musketeers and pikemen. Big blocks of pikemen with musketeers on the side. And then cannon that was not very mobile yet. And if you ever heard of things like companies for military units, platoons, companies, your regiments, battalions, all of those will come into the norm in the 30 Years' War. Who commands a battalion? It just basically means the person in charge is the captain, and that will come about in these wars. Yeah. Pikemen, they have a 14-foot long pike. So if you have a whole box, let's say a 16 by 16 block of men, all like this, and they're all marching together. When they see the enemy, they all put the pike down at once and march at somebody. Nobody's going to want to stand in their way.
No.
But I think you see the problem with that. You have a big block of men. What if you're all facing this way and someone comes this way? Or think about when they start getting better camp. So they're going to become obsolete.
Right in the middle.
Yeah. But that's a pikeman. And so you have some of the cannon, and they first started having the first mobile cannon, and so the cases, they could move up very quickly. And at first they'd be drug by horses and the men would follow along, but pretty soon they're going to have cavalry where the men will ride on horses next to it or on wagons next to it. Much more mobile. There's arquebuses, riflemen. Now the problem is they couldn't hit anything, but these were the more specially trained ones. Crossbows are going to start going out of fashion. Bow and arrows, because they're so much more complex. The longbow is going to go out too. Yeah.
On the picture at the bottom, it looks like they have something holding up the.
Yeah.
Right.
They were so difficult to hold up, so top heavy. They would pull down like this. They would have a brace. And the other thing is, it's black powder. Black powder is not an explosive. It just ignites in the barrel, and then the gases push the bullet out. So the bullet doesn't go out very heavy. So yeah, if you want to fire more than 100 yards, what do you got to do? Like this, and kind of lob the shell.
So it's kind of like archery, just with extra steps.
In a way, yeah. And so you're going to start seeing the better barrels get a little bit longer. But even by the Civil War, in the United States Civil War, the range, an effective range for a musket was about 150 yards. That's not very far. How far can you fire a modern rifle today? I'm not saying you'll hit anything, but how far can the bullet go? It can go a mile and a half. You have like this, but it can go a mile and a half. And so, but they can move. It's much more flexible with cannon. Kind of our modern military. Oh, so captain would be in charge of a company. The person responsible for organizing things, yeah, that's where you get the term sergeant. The person who would assist the captain is the lieutenant. All of that would come out in the 30 Years' War. The same thing would be the overall command. Eventually, we would get a general. They literally called it the captain general or lieutenant general, and then the sergeant major general. That's literally what they call it, and that turned into major general. So in the United States Army today, a 2-star general is a major general, a 3-star lieutenant general, 4-star general.
Is there anything more than a 4 or 5-star?
There's been one person more than a 5-star. General John Pershing from World War I. They gave him essentially the command of General of the Army. And the closest you can say is a 6-star general. World War II, there were a bunch of 5-star generals, but the highest ranking officer is 4-star today. Army, Marines, Navy, an admiral is equivalent of a 4-star. So, there you see the combined army. That's a pretty good picture. Those are the pikemen. By the way, why do men march in step? The military. Because you're carrying a big pike, you got to march in step.
Oh, like marching alongside and
Mm-hmm. And marching in step and all coming together so you don't trip and fall and drop your pike into someone's back. Bad for pikeman morale. Write that down.
I think you're just bonking in the back of the head with the main part of it. So
Maybe.
I mean, depends.
Roll the die.
Depends on if you're like in the back of the
Yeah,
line.
unless you're in the back, or a lot of things can happen. Let's just say too, if you fall down, the whole row falls down. And so one of the things about it is you got to be able to turn all these units together, these big blocks. And that's why so much of the military is going to be learning how to march, and then turn, go from a column like you're marching on a road to a line in battle. All of that, 30 Years' War. That's going to become a great. Part of the reason the Swedes are going to have such success is because they do that. And so, the first phase of the war, now don't forget, the good king was killed. When Henry IV was killed, you might think, well, what does that have to do with things? That showed that religious conflict had not been solved. The religious conflict still went Protestant-Catholic divide. And so the Bohemian phrase, Bohemia, where is Bohemia? This part of Wisconsin right here.
Isn't Bohemia like a modern?
Actually, there is a town there called Bohemia.
Isn't it like kind of Czech Republic?
Yeah, right. Czech Republic, that's Bohemia, right here. The capital is Prague. Has anyone been to Prague? Watch your ankles. Yeah.
Who is fighting in the
We'll get to it. We'll get to it. So, Ferdinand II was the king who inherited the crown of Bohemia. And by the way, the first lines are going to be between Lutheran and Catholic. Ferdinand II and Ferdinand II wanted to break out the influence of the Holy Roman Empire. We're not going to go into all the details of the 30 Years' War. And the thing about it is, though, is that the Bohemians hated his guts.
Why?
Catholic. And they were mostly Lutheran. He was somebody who was imposed on the king, or posed as king of Bohemia. And he tried to drive the Lutherans out. Now, what was the peace that Charles V signed that said the princes could choose their own religion? Peace of, Augsburg. Now, what the people of Bohemia thought is we had somewhat religious freedom. Well, what's that? They were people who went modern-day Czechoslovakia, modern-day Czech Republic. They're part of the Holy Roman Empire.
No, wait.
Oh, they were Lutheran.
Okay.
Yeah, they were Lutheran. I'm sorry, I didn't understand. But Augsburg said he could decide. Yeah, it was, a lot of people thought, I got religious freedom. No, the prince decided. So he said, I'm doing nothing wrong. In fact, I should have support of the emperor, who was Catholic. This is Austrian, yeah.
It's not sure.
We'll get to it. And so, what we're coming to is called the defenestration of Prague. Now, does anybody know what defenestration means? Yes.
That means throwing someone out a window.
And I should be clear about this. This actually happened twice in Prague. 50 years earlier, somebody was thrown. This is the second defenestration of Prague. Should we defenestrate somebody?
Yes, you.
Hey now. Yeah.
Did you know the Americans are the only people without a word for the day after tomorrow?
With a what?
We're the only people who don't have a word for the day after tomorrow.
Really? I did not know that.
What other country uses it as that terminology?
England, Britain.
So what happened was, the emperor sent representatives to basically try to support Ferdinand and convince the people of Prague, hey, we're not going to lose your total religion, but you're going to have to accept that you're going to have to be Catholic. You've got to kind of be underground. They thought it was a compromise. But when he met with local people in Prague, they didn't see it as that. And so they grabbed them, roughed them up, and threw all three of them out of a 3-story window.
They died.
No. Now, according to the Catholics, it was the divine hand of God guided them down, and they survived. I should add there was an iron fence nearby that would have impaled them. So they're actually quite lucky. Quite lucky they didn't hit that. When the king of Serbia was killed in what's called regicide in the early 20th century, he landed on a cast iron fence and okay, moving on.
Was it like one of those fences that have like those like
Yeah.
Okay.
And what?
I wonder if they had an open casket.
I don't want that.
Open
Well, he fell. Now, what the Protestants said, they survived because they landed on what?
Pillows?
A big pile of manure.
Hey, I'd rather fall into that than die.
Sure, but I agree. But with that, they decided we're going to take our own king. And they got, which is kind of ironic because he actually started out as Catholic too, but he's no dummy. Remember, what was Henry of Navarre's famous saying when he converted to Catholicism?
Paris is worth a mass.
Yeah, Paris is worth a mile. And that's the new King Frederick II. And this is going to trigger a war because the emperor has decided, I'm going to get rid of this pesky Protestant kingdom at once. Yeah.
Did any of them die from the defenestration?
No, defenestration. We should do this. No, we should. I have a really low window. Volunteers?
Oh, yeah.
There's always somebody who will volunteer. I'll do it.
As I raise my
Well,
hand.
because it's fun.
So, Ferdinand II would go on to become the new emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. Catholic, ties with Austria, and so he now is going to punish his nemesis. That's him. Hmm? I don't know. I really don't. So I can't tell. That dog existed, but it seems like it's a little bit too chubby, but I don't know. And he got support of Habsburg Spain. Habsburg Spain was having their own issue with, they just expelled the last Muslims out of Spain, and they were having issues in the Netherlands. And so they thought this would be a way to weaken the Protestant cause. I mentioned the Netherlands right there. And so it simply was at first just a rebellion against the rule of the Holy Roman Empire. It inspired a couple other kingdoms that were Protestants, but most stayed on the sideline. For example, if we look at this map right here, here's Bohemia, Saxony's right here, and they were Protestant. They stayed out of it. We're like, let's wait and see what happens. Let's not jump in until we know what happens. And so, this is going to be sold by Ferdinand as destroying almost the messengers of Satan. And that's what the Bohemians are going to be saying too. Yet most people are looking at this, what is it called? where you get outside of religious bounds and look into the values of the state, or more importantly, the leaders of the state. Yeah. Yeah, politique. And this might shock you. Sometimes people practicing politique will use religion as a way to get their goals. Did I just blow your mind?
Yes.
So, Ferdinand vowed to crush them, and that is going to lead to the Catholic League and the Protestant League. Does that remind you of something? Who else had a Catholic League and a Protestant League? Yeah, France. I mean, they all do it.
It's just the easiest, and there's no copyright.
And so, this is from my great atlas of world history. But this easy to follow map shows the Bohemian phrase. Yeah, so Brandenburg jumped in, which would be soon, though, morph into Prussia. They stayed out of it. A few countries sent weapons. The Netherlands had their own problems, even though they indirectly supported. Britain had their own problems and stayed out of it. France is waiting for the best chance to jump in on which one they can get the most land from. Same with the Ottomans down here. But most countries ganged up on Prussia, most of them. They had a bigger army, more soldiers, better trained. There are a couple of successes. Actually, they won a battle and they decided to try to go invade Vienna and were routed. And in the process of retreating, that's going to lead to one of the most important battles in history, the Battle of White Mountain. And I love this painting because can you see the squares of the pikemen? So they have the pikemen, the big squares, and then more mobile arquebus on all over. And they're starting to divvying up into units, giving up the command, cavalry on the side. Imperial forces, the Holy Roman Empire won. The rebellion was crushed. And they won. The big reason they won? Yeah. It's near Prague, so it's in Bohemia. You could go there. I wanted to go there, but I just didn't have the time. So I think these kind of things are neat. But I guess they have it's really beautiful there, and they have it organized so you can see a lot of it. So, got the bus. The problem was the imperial forces had really experienced soldiers from Spain who had been fighting against the Dutch for years. They had Austrian forces that were better trained and better equipped. The Protestants were almost the same size, but it was just a hodgepodge of group. They had no cohesion, and they broke. It's a what if. If the Bohemians go to hell, who knows how history began? Really, it's one of the great what ifs in history. Yeah.
You think just historians are just weird old guys making this stuff up?
Possibly, yeah.
How many people were there?
Either side, both sides had about 7,000. You couldn't really get much bigger than that because you couldn't feed them. And that's why you start getting 30 or 40,000 men. It's just, how do you feed them? They still had no supply line, so where do you get your food? Yeah, you liberated from nearby farmers. And when armies marched across what is now Germany, can you imagine how horrible it was? Just absolutely horrible. And so, why is this white?
Danish phase.
The Danish phase. So, Denmark is watching this. King Christian, Denmark has a, yeah.
Wait, is that his name or is that where the character?
No, that was his name.
Okay.
He's Protestant, he's Lutheran. And they're watching this, and Christian decides, well, I should have. Bohemian Rebellion's closed, it's crushed, it's over. It's absolutely over. This area is now in, they're going to be forced to become Catholics, brutally put down, hundreds are going to be executed. And he sees this and said, he's furious that other Protestant states didn't join in. And he thought all they needed was a push. So King Christian said to protect the Protestants, because if it's going to happen here, it could happen in other places, he invaded. assuming that all these other Protestant kingdoms would join him. Thus, the Danish phase. No.
Hips so big.
So, I don't know why I put for the army. It's supposed to be for the imperial army. I forgot the word imperial. Wallenstein was a very intelligent, he's for the imperial or the Holy Roman Empire. He is part of the Catholic League. And Wallenstein was known as being a brilliant defender, organizing of men. He was technically Catholic, but you know what? If the Protestants would have paid him more, he probably would have been Catholic too. And he began to reorganize the army, organize the forces of the imperial army to meet the Christian threat. Because Denmark had a well-trained army, it was just small. And so Wallenstein, known for a volcanic temper, for example, he could not tolerate any loud sounds at all, would demand perfect silence, which is really weird for a commanding general of an army where there's cannon. He also could not tolerate cats or dogs and meows or barks.
Why?
And so any town that he would go in, he would order his men to kill every dog or cat they could find.
Why?
Because he could not tolerate the sound.
They're
I
so
guess they
cute
could
though.
sometimes be annoying, but I don't go that far.
Well, he defeated the Danes in 2 successive battles, and King Christian had to go back with his tail between his legs. Have you learned the lesson from this? Should have got the Swedes. That's why he had to come to Helena.
So remind me never to fight for the whole Roman Empire.
No, you can fight the Roman Empire, you just need Swedes. And in 1829, after this glorious victory, Ferdinand the Emperor would proclaim the Edict of Restitution, and they're going to start taking Catholic land back. So Lutherans have got the land, nope, Catholics are going to take it. I should have. This is a smart move. It's so dumb that the pain hurts. Nobody joined Christian. The other Protestant states did not join you. No, did not join the Danes. And so, you won. But by taking the land of the Christian princes, what have you just done? You made enemies. They stayed out of the fight because they didn't care what the Danes did. And they thought they were perfectly fine and the Bohemians were stupid for rebelling. Not now. Yeah. No. Oh, I wrote this wrong. This is Protestant land back. My fault. I meant to say Catholics take the land back. That's what probably we were typing in front of you for everything. Thank you for saying that. I didn't even realize I did that. So, the German princes feared this. Yeah.
How many of these princes were there?
There are over 1,000 different little principalities in what is now Germany. Little cities, little duchies, all these kind of feudal relationships. It was chaos. That's one of the things that Napoleon's going to just like say, oh, you're just going to be in the Confederation of the Rhine. And so, in anger and the realization he made a terrible mistake, he fired Wallenstein. And guess who's watching? The Swedes. Thus, Albert von there's Albert von Wallenstein. By the way, doesn't he look like a guy who hates cats?
Yeah.
I got cats on my shirt.
He looks like
You better start running back.
The Swedish phase.
You better start running before you catch him with that shirt on.
So, the Swedes, Lutherans, watch this. The Swedes have land in Pomerania. Here. So the Swedes are here. They own this. And the Swedes have a well-trained army, a very talented leader in their king, Gustavus. And he's watching this and he's going, I'll get his name in just a sec, the spelling. Using this as a base, he attacks, with Wallenstein being hurt. So, who supports him? The Catholic French. Why are the Catholic French supporting him? They hate the Habsburgs. They support him. We'll get to it. There's a guy named Richelieu, and we'll get to him. Gustavus Adolphus was the king, and he was known for being very intelligent, shockingly brave. He was known for having these very elaborate hunts where he would use nothing but a spear and or a knife, much like me attacking grizzly bears. And when I go fight grizzly bears.
We are Americans, we do have a high chance of winning.
And at the Battle of Breitenfeld, the Swedish army, outnumbered, but now well-trained, combined arms, bolts of pikemen holding the middle, arquebus men on the side, cavalry in the rear. Here is a painting of it, and I love this painting. See, these are the pikemen. They just show them all with like, I like that. Whatever. All right. A smashing victory. Unprecedented victory. The Swedes. So there's a painting of Gustavus Adolphus in the very much the Baroque method. See the.
Bored out of his mind.
So here we go. We'll come back to this battle, but I promised you this, right?
Yes.
It's not working.
Just take a picture of it.
No, I downloaded the video. It's not as good as I thought. Do you want to see it?
Yes.
I promise I'll show you this. That's really annoying. Lego battle. I should have saved this in my files too.
You should or should.
So this actually. Gustavus. I know. Is it a little bit too realistic? Do we? Good luck you there.
One thing I like,
Sorry.
I like
Sorry,
when, like
no
right
one
before
cares.
the cavalry charge, he's like, cavalry, charge. And how tired he sounded.
What was the productions?
All right, time to watch one about the.
All right, we'll watch that when we get there.
Oh.
All right,
You better save that one.
You got it. That was pretty good. That was pretty good. I enjoyed that one. I mean, there's a lot of stuff about the 30 Years' War. I gotta change something. By the way, do you like the Jonestown? Without going into detail, the turn it gets dark very quickly, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I know the way they said it, but it's also like it's really good. Show, tell. Show, take you. Spin. Oh!
You put Russia
That could be a
twice.
permanent record.
You put Russia twice.
We looking for a job. Look at this.
I'll start scratch.
Use that as a.
By the way, we're getting close to my map finally working. It's close. We're not quite there yet, but it's close.
You put Russia twice.
Did I?
Uh-huh.
There's two Russias.
Russia's important. By the way, about the Russia, did you see what Russia, it's happening between Russia and Ukraine now?
Not yet.
So there was shelling last night. Both sides exchanged artillery. And Russia is now claiming that there's a genocide against Russian, ethnic Russians in eastern Ukraine.
Why?
So that sounds like they're planning. And they only got a couple more weeks so they can do it because they'll get too muddy because the tanks will go to war.
Did you hear that they were doing soccer
Yeah.
taps?
There's cyber tanks against the four major banks, for example. Yeah. But the big one, shelling, they exchanged artillery fire. A few people a few civilians were wounded. As far as I know, nobody was killed. Mm-hmm. That's huge.
Okay. There's other things in there.
Let me do this real quick. I have to proofread and then.
We're seeing another World War happening in probably 3 days.
I don't think so. I think Russia doesn't have enough men to really do the invasion, but.
Let's just go nuclear weapons are involved.
Ukraine had nuclear weapons after the Cold War ended, and they gave them up willingly.
To Russia?
Yes. even. Yeah. I'd say you're very good. Let me know what happens. Any questions? Can we find anything? Are we good? I'll point at anything vaguely on the map. Yeah.
Doesn't Italy have this thing on
Oh, the reason I put Italy with an asterisk is because it has it as a whole country. There was no Italy yet. So I just, the generic area is called Italy. So go ahead and write that in, but it was not yet the country of Italy. Hmm? Yeah. And Italy would not be a country until 1863. Okay, shut up. We're filming. Oh, it's filming you guys' work. Is that exciting?